Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for a special meeting of the Town Council, Wednesday, December 13th, 2006, where we'll be receiving a presentation from Pennachuck Waterworks regarding the removal of the Chamberlain Dam. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have a set of announcements, but they're going to be the same announcements as tomorrow, so we'll save them to tomorrow. What I would like to do is spend a couple of quick minutes on where we are and go from there. And beautiful. Richard, are you going to bring up a chair? Because I'd like to see you up here too. All right.
Which way are we moving? This way? Okay, let's move this way.
Bring a chair, I'm leaving.
Okay. And the first thing I want to touch base on before I introduce everyone around the tables is what we've already done and what we're looking to do, so there isn't some confusion, because this is something that's been going on for at least 3 to 4 years. And we have already had public hearings on the removal of the dam. We've had public input. We've had Speak Now or Forever Hold Your Peace. And well, basically, that part of it has been long decided. So there are some people that weren't aware that were saying, well, geez, I don't think they should take down the dam, or I don't think they should do this. And to try and be as diplomatic as I can, that part has long been decided, and Pennachuck certainly gave us all our chance to voice. They gave the town the chance to buy it, and all that has really been laid out. What we are looking for today is it's been a couple of years since our last public meeting, and we've all been reading stuff in the paper, and the council and the Watson Committee and some of the Nelson and Andy who've been working with Pennachuck. We thought it would be good to get us all together so we can ask some specific questions instead of 3 weeks before having everyone say, well, what about this, what about that? So this is kind of a public information session, and anyone watching this at home that is here that has questions later, I guess I would recommend they call Keith Hickey, who isn't here this evening because of a family commitment, and he can put you in touch with people that can answer further questions for you. So again, we aren't here tonight to decide should the dam come or go. That's long gone, that's history, and it was decided that it was in the best interest to go that way. The other thing is we're not looking to ask questions for the sake of it. My realistic feeling is that by 8:30 and 9 o'clock we will be out of here. We have a very thorough presentation. Mr. Malzone, do you have something you'd like to share with us?
No.
Okay. We have a very thorough presentation, and at that point we have questions that have already been written up, and we'll go from there. So I'm looking for this to be pretty orderly, and we'll go forward. With that being said, I would like to introduce everyone that's sitting around the tables, and then we will get rolling. We'll start off with Deb Wazell from the New Hampshire DES. Deb, thank you very much for joining us. Steve Densberger from Pennachuck. Steve. Our own Nelson Disco, straight from his performance on the big screen in Daddy's Girl as a judge. Nelson Disco, and head of our planning board. Ruth Wu, chairman of the Heritage Commission. Connie Krieger from the Watson Park
And
Heritage. Jackie Flood, chairman of the Harold and Barbara Watson Park Committee. Richard Malone, member of the Harold and Barbara Watson Park Committee, who has really been instrumental the last several months in working this project and coming up with questions. I want to thank Richard personally. He's kind of taken the lead in this latest thing. The representatives up to this, Nelson and Andy, have been with it for several years, but Richard, as a member of the Watson Park, has also taken Watson Park's take on this and kind of carved their questions to it. Andy Powell, who again has been the point man for the town. I'm Dave McRae. Betty Spence, Vice Chair. Tom Koenig, Town Councilor. Mike Malzone, Town Councilor. Nancy Harrington, Town Councilor. Finley Rothaus, Town Councilor. And Ed Chase, Director of the DPW, who has been, again, the point man for the town. And as I had alluded to earlier, Keith has some family commitments that he will be at, so Ed will be here as a DPW and also will be representing the town manager for any questions of staff we have. Also, Tom Mahon also has some family commitments that he is out of state, and he will not be attending tonight, and he will be viewing the tape later. So, with all that being said, I think what I'd like to start off with is go to Mr. Densberger from Pennachuck and ask if you have any opening remarks you'd like to make, Steve.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to bring everybody up to date. This project has been going on for about 2.5 years. We've had several public meetings, and we welcome the opportunity to come back and give everybody an update on what's going on. It's been our policy since day one to make sure that we had plenty of public involvement in this. It's a big issue, and it's an important thing for the community to be engaged in. So we welcome these opportunities to talk to everyone in town and to show you and tell you what we've been doing and to be able to answer questions. So Mark Wamser is our engineer. He's with Gomez and Sullivan. Mark's worked on a number of projects for Pennachuck. He's a water resource specialist, and he's done a great job putting a presentation together. I'd really like him to be able to take you through the presentation, because it will give you some background on the dam, a history, what Pennachuck's been doing, what this whole project team has been up to and including, our most recent activities, which is the studies that we're doing that are necessary before you go anywhere with this type of project. So with that, if I could, I'd like to introduce Mark Wamser.
Absolutely, Mr. Densberger.
Thank you.
And the thing I mentioned is to what Steve said, what we are looking for is to Mark to give his total presentation, and then at that point we'll talk a little as a group, and then we have the questions that have already been answered. And I would expect that as long as we feel comfortable, the people asking them will just skip over them, or they may reference them to say Mark already touched base on that. But I would like to go through the whole presentation without questions if that's possible. Mark, you're up.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Can folks, I think that's better. This is the agenda that I was planning on covering tonight, and at the very end, as David said, we'll hold questions. But the 3 key points I wanted to get across to folks tonight was why are we looking at removing the dam, or what are some of the goals, the project chronology. I know some of the folks that were involved with this in 2003 has changed hands. There's a different council now, so I wanted to get people up to speed. I have put in there what I can call conceptual plans, very preliminary plans on what we plan on doing relative to the removal. And I do have some discussion about Watson Park in particular. Richard Maloon's been sending me a lot of questions on that, and I wanted to address some of those. Just as a little background, this is the Sauhegan River watershed. This is the dam we're talking about, Merrimack Village Dam. The next dam upstream is McLean Dam. There's 14 miles of river in between these 2 dams and about 5 miles of tributaries that fish, if they get above here, can access. One myth I want to dispel right off is this dam backs up water, but it does not impact any flow conditions in Milford. So if the dam's removed, Milford flows are not going to dry out, so to speak. I think there was some folks thought that was the case, but that will not occur here. Most of you know the area, but I thought it would be good to have a location map. Here's the dam we're talking about. Here's the impoundment, which goes up to about just below the Everett Turnpike Bridge. Here is generally where the Watson Park is, Babusick Brook, and then on to the Merrimack. This is just a little closer up aerial view. Again, we have the fire department. Here's the arched spillway. It's about a 20-foot high dam. There's an apron, as you can see, that extends down. This bridge, called Chamberlain Bridge, is on the State Register of Historic Places. And there's a canal wall that goes along the riverside. This is all bedrock through here, and then it goes to like kind of a pool area. So in terms of some of the goals for removal, as I said earlier, one of the big reasons for looking at this dam was there is a national or federal initiative to try and restore rivers. And in this case, by removing the dam, it opened up 14 miles of habitat for fish and 5 miles of intervening tributaries between the McLean Dam and this dam. Anybody that's been involved with dam projects, dams do create still slow-moving water that increases temperatures, increases dissolved oxygen levels, which has an impact on the water quality. With the dam in place, what happens is when there's natural sediment transport that occurs upstream, when I mean by sediment transport, sand that gets carried along the river will become impounded by the dam. It'll back up because the water velocity in the impoundment is so much slower, so it'll precipitate out. What we're trying to do is restore some of that natural sediment transport that occurs in all natural rivers. Flood impacts, obviously with the dam in place, it artificially raises water levels, and by taking the dam out, flood levels will be reduced. There has been talk about a potential recreation path where there's an old logging road on the left side of the river as you look upstream. And from Pennachuck's standpoint, they have a dam that they've owned since 1964, have never used it for water supply purposes, and there is a letter of deficiency, meaning there's some problems with the dam. So from a business perspective, they're looking at what it costs to maintain and operate the dam. There's liabilities, and there are dam repairs that are going to be required. In terms of what we're looking at for removal, it's only the dam and the apron. The canal walls, the abutments will remain. It's to be determined whether part of the dam may be required to stay. That'll be determined as part of the historic mitigation, and I'll get into that a little bit. The chronology events, I've got 3 slides on this, and I'll try and go through this reasonably quickly. Early 2003 is when Pennachuck first considered the option of removing the dam. Following that, in May 2003, the Board of Selectmen opted to have a public hearing in this same room. At that same time in May, DES notified what's called the Department of Historic Resources, or DHR, about the potential removal. Anytime you remove a dam that it may be of historic value, you need to consult with DHR. So that was the first correspondence with them. In June 2003, in this room is where we had a meeting to talk about the potential removal of the dam. In looking at some of the minutes that the Board of Selectmen developed, they established an advisory group consisting primarily of the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Community Development. And between those 3 local groups, the state being DES and Pennachuck, they developed what's called a Phase 1 feasibility study. We're removing a dam, potentially removing the dam. We want to know, is there anything big out there that we should be concerned about that would preclude removing the dam? For example, if we found that there was a sewer line going beneath the impoundment, that may preclude removing the dam. If there was contaminants found, that may preclude it. But thus far, we have not found anything that would cause for stopping the removal. The DES conducted a dam safety inspection in October 2003. Then they issued Pennachuck the letter of deficiency. And in that letter, it defined what some of the problems were with the dam, that it didn't meet certain dam safety criteria. In February 2004, because DES knew that Pennachuck was pursuing removal, they gave them a 2-year extension on addressing some of the repair issues. Between 2004 and 2005 is when we did most of the feasibility work, and I won't get into that now because I have a few slides later about that, and I'll hit the high points. After that feasibility study was done, we had another meeting here to talk about the results. In July 2005, we did get a letter from the town Board of Selectmen saying that there was no interest in owning the dam. Pennachuck had offered it to the town previously. In December 2005, Pennachuck, DES, and Fish and Wildlife met with Historic Resources to discuss historical and archaeological studies. Again, if you're removing a dam that's potentially historic value, there's mitigation may be required. Similarly, if archaeological, if the removal of the dam would disturb archaeological or artifacts in the area, you'd have to look at what the impacts could be. In December 2005, NOAA is the lead, what's called the lead federal agency relative to Section 106 consultation of the National Historic Preservation Act. They're the federal agencies leading the charge on this, so to speak. Following that, we then sent a letter out to potentially interested consulting parties relative to the 106 consultation. And what that means is going out to any party that we thought may have an interest in being involved with the historic component of this project. And we have never received no consulting parties have ever come forward other than Division of Historic Resources that we obviously have to work with. In January 2006, Pennachuck did a presentation for the Sauhegan Watershed Association with George May. In February 2006, there was a presentation to the Manchester Fly Fishermen's Association. And then in March 2006, again, we met here for another public meeting to discuss the work completed to date as well as future work. We also gave a presentation to the Merrimack River chapter of TU in 2006, and I did attend one meeting with the Heritage Commission to kind of brief them on the project status in April of 2006. In June of this year, the historic study was completed. It was sent to Division of Historic Resources and the Merrimack Heritage Commission, among other groups. There was a meeting with the agencies. When I mean agencies, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New Hampshire Fish and Game, Department of Environmental Services in Concord to talk about conceptual plans for removal of the dam and how we're going to deal with the sediment behind the dam. What's being completed right now is archaeological study was conducted. There was what's called test pits where you dig into the ground to see if there are potential artifacts. This was done above and below the dam, and it was just finished up this past week. DHR did find the dam individually eligible, and as a small district, it's eligible. What that means is now there has to be a memorandum of agreement between the consulting parties, the Corps, NOAA, and Department of Environmental Services. I know this is confusing, so if folks have questions at the end, and there's a lot of terms in here, so obviously feel free to ask questions at the end.
Jonathan, when you say consulting parties,
Consulting parties are, we sent out a request for any party out there, historical party. So we sent letters to people in Massachusetts, the National Register. We sent, I don't have them in front of me. We sent a whole series of letters out to
saying the word consulting, I just wasn't sure who those parties were.
Right now, there's none other than the state. But the goal here is to remove the dam in 2007 using what's called a staged approach, and I'll get into what that means. So the phase one work that was done, I won't get into what the results were on all of these, but this is kind of a summary. This is what was done in 2004 and 2005. Sediment testing was done to quantify how much sediment there was, what type of sediment, whether contaminants in the sediment or not. The results showed that it was clean. We did what's called hydraulic modeling, and what that basically is a model to predict what the water depths, widths, velocities in the river would be upstream of the dam with and without the dam in place. So mostly it's to give an idea of how much the river width will shrink down after the dam's removed. We did a wetlands delineation. We researched infrastructure impacts, as I said. In this particular area, it's not an issue, but in some cases, homeowners may drill a well after the dam was in place. The dam goes out, their well goes dry. So those are the type of infrastructure impacts we had to look at. We did research on what the historical extent of anadromous fish are on the Souhegan River. And what I mean by anadromous fish, those are fish like salmon, shad, herring that spawn in freshwater but go out to the ocean. We did look at summary of what's been of the recreation use in the area. There has been, I think in the late 80s, there were some interest of hydropower development at the site, but our research showed that there were, in both cases, it was the economics didn't prove worthy to pursue it. We did dam and what's called bathymetric surveys. That's basically a contour map, no different than a topo map, but it's under the water. It's what's underneath the impoundment above the dam. And we've had continuous public outreach. So work that was done this year, we've done a conceptual plan for removal, which I'll share with you. We've done the historic and archaeological studies. We've had a pre-permitting meeting with the agencies. There is an ice study. What I mean by an ice study is the removal of the dam could have an impact on ice development, particularly at the Chamberlain Bridge. Our preliminary findings are that it isn't an issue, but we wanted to be sure, so we sent it to what's called the Corps Cold Regions Lab in Lebanon, New Hampshire, for them to give an opinion on it as well. Obviously, the public outreach. And we are, on this project, there is grant money that we are pursuing to help defray the cost of removal. Phase 2 work that's in progress is the preparation and submittal of the permits, finalizing drawings, preparation of bid documents for a contractor, and developing what I talked about a little bit earlier, the memorandum of agreement. In terms of the grants, we've had to get to bolster or increase our percentage of getting grant monies. We sought letters of support for the removal, and these are the groups that have supported the removal, and we've used their letters in our grant applications. I'll go through a little bit on this tentative plan for removal, and I want to emphasize the word tentative. This isn't finalized by any means yet. There's basically 4 stages that we're looking at right now. And to kind of set the stage, so to speak, there's a lot of sediment behind this impoundment. So just simply removing the dam in one swoop is not going to fly because of the amount of sediment. And because the sediment's clean and because of the conditions below the dam are pretty poor from a habitat perspective if you're a fish, we're talking about letting this sediment naturally be transported downstream, the sediment that's behind the dam. And we're talking sand primarily. So stage 1 is to establish turbidity in sediment monitoring stations. So we'll be putting monitors out there to find out what the sediment load is in the river. Stage 2 is a partial breach of the spillway or using the canal gates to dewater the impoundment. The whole idea here is to dewater the impoundment or the water level behind the dam to a point low enough so that vegetation can start to take hold. Roots can start to get into the exposed areas created by the removal. And the idea is to have those roots stabilize some of the sediments in place. Stage 3 would be a partial removal of the spillway. And the spillway is actually the curved part of the dam, and it'd be taking it down down a certain number of feet, not all the way down and not including the apron initially. It's just I'm just throwing out a number, but say we take down 8 feet. We only want to take down 8 feet because if we took down all 20 feet, there'd be a lot of sediment going down in one shot. So that's why we're looking at a potential partial removal here. Now, all during this time, too, we'd be monitoring how much sediment there is below the dam using the monitoring stations. Depending on how the sediment is moving through the system, we could remove the remainder part of the dam in late 2007, or we may wait another year to remove the remaining amount as well as the apron. So this is where we're talking about these monitoring stations. We'd monitor turbidity levels, how much sediment is being carried in the water itself. This gives us an idea of what we call baseline or background conditions. Because this site is upstream of the effects of this dam and this backwater, that gives us an idea of what's naturally occurring. The areas below is what we want to find out when we start removing this dam, how much sediment is coming in at these locations. The other thing that we are going to do when we go to remove is set what's called monumented cross-sections. They're basically surveys across the impoundment. So every so often we would come across and figure out what the cross-section looks like. And basically that's how much, what we're trying to do is gauge how much sediment is being sloughed off and moving downstream. So this would be occurring throughout the removal process, both above and below the dam. So that brings us to the dewatering stage. First thing we would do is put in what's called oil booms and a debris boom. Basically, it's ropes that would go across the river or a boom that would collect any debris that comes downstream. We would install an access route for equipment to access this part of the island. Our concern is when this dam comes out, it's going to what's called head cut. And what a head cut means is there's sediment right up to the top of this dam. And as soon as that dam comes out, you've got a wall of sediment that's just going to go right downstream. And in this area here that we've tested, it's also very soft material. So we're trying to be, instead of just letting this material just go automatically down, because there are some small trees here, we want to be actually take out some of this material and regrade the area so that this head cut doesn't keep going up this island. And we would regrade the slope. Then the last thing we would do is either using these canal gates or actually put a little breach, which would be a piece of equipment that breaches, and what I mean by a breach is a cut in the dam itself that would cause this water to start moving out through here. What we're trying to do is dewater this impoundment so that vegetation can start growing on the fringes. So after a month or so to allow some vegetation to grow, we'd then come back to the site again. This would be used as a staging area where equipment would be. And what we're talking about is putting in what's called a cofferdam. Basically, it's a temporary dam. And the reason why we need to put it in this way is to dewater this area here so that we can then bring in equipment to remove the upper, again, I'm just saying arbitrary, upper 8 feet of this dam. And we'd also remove some of this sediment, simply because we need to get in there to actually remove the dam. Now, the remaining part of the removal, again, we're not sure if this will end up occurring in 2007 or be delayed till 2003. A lot of it depends on what happens upstream here in terms of moving of sediment and also what's happening downstream relative to sediment. What we would do is, again, put the cofferdam in here. We'd also put one lining along here. So what we'd be doing is basically forcing the water around so that we then can get into this dry area and remove the apron. Hopefully that makes sense to folks. So I have been asked questions quite a bit about how will the removal affect Watson Park. The impoundment, MVD stands for Merrimack Village Dam. The impoundment has reached its maximum capacity in terms of storing sediment. Basically, there's sand right up to almost to the top of the dam. So yes, it has maxed out in terms of how much sediment it can hold. So what's occurring now is when sediment does come in from upstream from the towns of Milford, some of that is being transported downstream. Some settles out, but some of it further down by the dam is transported downstream, simply because the impoundment can't hold anymore. Another question that is important, I think, for folks to really understand is, does the dam modify the flow below the dam? And the answer is no. This dam is what's called a run-of-river project. So if you have X number of gallons of water coming in to the dam, the same amount's going to be released downstream. It's not going to change the rate of flow that comes in to what goes downstream. So the conditions that are occurring in terms of flow in the Watson Park area will not be any different now as it would be with the dam removed. Another question is, upon removal of the dam, will sediment from the impoundment deposit below the dam in the Sauhegan? It will. It will temporarily, because after the sediment goes over the dam, there's a free-flowing section of the river. If you stand on the bridge and look downstream, it's where the canal wall is. But shortly after the end of the canal wall, it's like a pool. The river almost serves as a pool, and that's a natural area where sediment will precipitate out. What I mean by temporary is, over time, when higher flows come in, it will scour that sediment back out, and you'll eventually return to the condition that you're in today. Will erosion occur along the banks of the Sauhegan near Watson Park? The answer is yes and no. As I said, the sediment that is moved downstream from the removal of this dam will eventually erode, but will it erode more than it is right now? I would say no. It will eventually reach the state of equilibrium like it is in the situation it's in currently. And this is just the area, as I was talking about. This is pretty fast-moving water through here. Obviously, the width of the river is a lot narrower, so it moves faster through here. But this area here is where I would envision most of the sediment, at least temporarily depositing, until high flows come in and scour it down to the Merrimack. One other thing.
Quick one, again, I'm trying to not ask questions, but the word eventually, that's a real open-ended word. Is eventually 6 months, 6 years? How long do you see the disbursement?
Most sediment transport occurs on what's called a 1 to 2 year flood event. So that gives you an idea. Unfortunately, we can't predict what Mother Nature is going to be in the future.
Give me the answer to the question. You give me something to put eventually with.
Okay. But one thing I do want to note is, when the Merrimack River is flowing real high, it backwaters, meaning it creates, part of the Merrimack actually will come up to almost right here. And that's why you see a very flat pool through here, is that the gradient and the river is very mild, but also it does become backwatered, or the Merrimack pools up so high it serves as a pool right up to the base of where the canal wall is. This next few slides is not specific to Merrimack Village Dam, but in talking to folks in advance, I wanted to bring this up to eliminate, hopefully, any confusion. The state of New Hampshire has both what's called a Rivers Management and Protection Program and a Dam Removal and River Restoration Program. And they're different programs, although they do work together. What I wanted to talk to you briefly about is the Rivers Management and Protection Program. As some of you may know, as you drive over Chamberlain Bridge now, there's a sign saying Sauhegan River, designated river. Any river segment in New Hampshire can be nominated as a designated river. It has to be nominated by a citizen or organization. Designated rivers must be approved by the state commissioner, the legislature, and the governor. And currently there's 14 of them. You can see them listed over here. But these are the designated rivers in the state. Now, the Sauhegan is one of those 14 designated rivers. And as part of the process to be even nominated, there's significant input that's required from the towns that are contained within that river valley. So it's a pretty lengthy process to become nominated and then designated. So that's just a little bit of background, at least on the rivers management. The other part, the Dam Removal and River Restoration Program, is different. And Deb Lozelle from New Hampshire DES is the one that heads this up. They assist dam owners and communities through what's the dam removal process. There are active owners that are looking to remove dams, and they assist them through that process. They also help them with potential funding for removals and studies that need to be done before you can remove a dam. They have what's called a task force. And the task force is a public-private collaboration, and their goal is to restore rivers and eliminate hazards through, and I underline the word selective dam removal. The state is not actively going out and asking dam owners, do you want to remove your dam? However, if they go out and do a dam safety inspection and they do find issues with the dam that doesn't meet certain criteria, then they will offer this as an option. Some dam owners want to, keep and maintain their dam. Other dam owners, it's a liability. Just as additional information, there's about 4,000 some odd dams just in the state of New Hampshire. Some of them are used for flood storage and hydropower, but the majority of them are old, abandoned dams that have, in some cases, don't even have an identifiable owner. So the ones that they're primarily looking at are owners willing to remove the dam. And these are the members right now that currently serve on this task force that meet every so often to talk about river restoration and dam removal projects. That is what I had for presentation. A couple things. If anybody does have questions beyond the meeting tonight, if they want to give me a call, my number's here. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. The other thing is this presentation I'm giving tonight is on this website. And if anybody wants a CD version, I have 3 CD versions of the presentation that I can give to folks tonight if they want.
Okay, I'd like to jump in and just contradict you a little bit.
Okay.
What we would prefer would be that the questions go through Town Manager Hickey, and my concern there is just if someone has a question from one of our many boards or citizens, they go directly to you, then you may get the same question later. So if people have questions, if they could funnel through the Town Manager, and that way we'll all get the answers and distribute it accordingly.
That's fine.
Not that you're off limits, I just think it would be better for everyone if we funnel it through.
Yeah, the only thing is I would like to have some type of deadline so I know, like, we're through this part of the process, I guess.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's tough to put a deadline on the citizens if someone comes up with a question.
Okay.
They got it. I mean, I would say anyone watching out here, the sooner the better for everyone.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that the door is closed by any means, but I want to have an idea.
At the same end, I can't speak for 28,000 people.
Yeah, I understand. So if folks have questions,
Okay,
feel
what I'd like
free.
to do is turn on the lights, and I would like to start off with going around to each counselor, seeing what they have, and then going around the rest of it and hitting the questions one by one and going from there. And as we have questions, raise your hand. I'd like us to be able to address it then. So even though we didn't ask any questions at the beginning, everything is on the table now. All right, Finley, we'll start with, in fact, I'd like to take one step back. So many people here. I do want to just take a second to ask if Deb would like to have any comments from the New Hampshire DES on anything you just heard, or just any comments overall.
No, I guess not at this time. I would like to acknowledge, though, I may be deferring some questions to those who are more appropriate to answer. There's several people in the audience from federal and state agencies who may be, again, more appropriate to answer some of those questions for later. But I certainly welcome any questions, as Mark said, and I know Steve has encouraged as well. That's why we're here. We're really excited to be here and to be able to offer anything that we can provide at this time. So I'd like to really turn it back to others.
Okay, then what I would also like to do is anyone, if you do defer, I would ask that they come forward to the empty seat next to Mark, so they'll have the use of the microphone.
Great.
Okay, great, Deb. I just wanted to have you weigh in. All right, Finley, we'll start with you and work around.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Very nice. I do have, I think, 3 questions. You had mentioned that the downstream of below the dam, the impact of the river would be nothing notable, I guess. short of this short apron beyond it. Would the same hold for upstream? Once it gets beyond the impoundment area, would flooding scenarios that we encounter oftentimes in the spring be similar?
If anything, the removal of the dam would reduce flood elevations. Will it change flood elevations above the Everett Turnpike Bridge? I would say no, because the impoundment ends upstream of that. So the effect of that dam doesn't really move beyond that.
Great.
So.
Then sediment removal. There's a pool around the Watson Park area.
Yep.
I haven't heard questions from, except for the few that I've read from Richard in particular, but that will, if I understood you correctly, that will clean back out again and be another pool similar to what it is currently?
Yeah. Because the impoundment has basically reached its maximum capacity right now of storing sediment, it would be no different than if the dam wasn't there. So what you see up below the dam now would eventually return. However, it won't return immediately. It will, as David asked earlier, it'll take some time when higher flows come in to scour that material out. So there will be no change downstream after a certain period of time. It'll go back to the conditions it's in right now.
The only reason I asked that is because it seems that the velocity of the water may pick up going through that narrow channel below the dam.
Yep.
I didn't know if that pool was created from that bit of acceleration there, or because we're not changing the width, would that velocity remain similar?
The velocity through here will be no different after the dam's removed. As I said, what comes into this dam, say it's 100 gallons of water coming in, the same is going to go out below the dam, with or without the dam in place.
Right. And then lastly, for now, when did the Saline River get designated river?
It was nominated, I think, in 2000.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, let me compliment you. Your presentation was concise and very thorough. It really
Thank
brought
you.
me up to speed, so thank you. As you intimated, a lot of the questions that the Watson Park Committee had submitted, and thank you for doing that, you did address in the presentation. So I don't have any specific questions because there are a lot of people here who are much more skilled at those
Okay.
kind of questions than I, but thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mike?
Thanks for the time. I was one of the citizens that was against the removal of the dam, just for the record. It's a little too late now, obviously, but I wanted to do state that for the record. My only question was, what happens to the wetlands that was behind the fire station and the wildlife that's associated with that area?
The wetland will become dewatered because the outlet of the wetland is controlled by sediment that's built up so long over time that and plus, really the wetland is only there because the dam is there.
Exactly.
So the minute the dam comes out, the sediment that forms it right at the outlet of that wetland is going to also go downstream. So it will dewater the wetland. What will happen is it'll convert eventually to like what's called scrub shrub type wetland versus what's open water wetland right now. That, in terms of impact on the geese and so or whatever that utilize the area, they will be impacted because you'll be losing open water habitat.
Thank you.
I appreciate your presentation, and I've been through a couple of these Phase 1 and Phase 2 study reports. Well, I guess I had never seen, and I was kind of curious from a technical perspective, what do you mean by individually eligible and small district eligible?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I may need some help from my partners here, but as I said earlier, anytime you remove the dam, you must look at historical and archaeological conditions. A study was done to determine the historical significance of this dam and how the dam and the bridge and the canal relate to a small village historically. So there was a study done. It was submitted to the state of New Hampshire. They then came back and found the dam individually eligible, meaning the dam is eligible for the state register of historic places. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, actually, it can
Okay.
be nominated for either the National Register of Historic Places and/or the state register. And when they say, as Mark said, individually eligible, it means it can stand on its own as a resource and be nominated.
Oh, okay. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Betty?
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
It was very informative, and I appreciate the background that you included to update us. One of the things that I'm wondering is, do you have any type of estimate on the total cost of this project for removal?
The removal costs are going to be somewhere in the $300,000 range.
Is that for the total project or just the removal?
The removal.
What about the little extra things that you're doing? I noticed that you indicated that the island type land that is on the top of the dam, that you're actually going to access that.
Right. That's what, again, preliminarily, that's what we're talking about. It hasn't been finalized, but yeah, that is something that we're looking at doing.
So all of that type of activity is not included in the $300,000?
No.
Okay. And are there any estimates that have been provided for the additional work?
Well, as I said, before we even did the removal estimate, Penachuk is actually, we've been doing 2-3 years worth of studies. I don't have the total off the top of my head of what all those feasibility studies cost, but I could provide it to you. You know, when I don't have it all right in front of me. I just know the dam removal costs because we are pursuing grants, and I had to put that into one of the grant applications.
Sure. And my other question is that you indicated during the presentation that there was consideration of abutting properties, and that there was no impact to the surrounding. I'm specifically interested in residential properties that abut, or any other for that matter, as far as the buildings are concerned, with removal of the dam and the flow of the river.
We, in every one of the public meetings that we've had, and I think we've had 3 thus far, every time we've had a public meeting, I've sent a letter to all the property owners, both above and below the dam that abut the river. So they've been abreast of the process from the very beginning. We're now going to be reaching out to a few additional landowners where we may need access on their property to do the removal. So we'll be contacting them as well. So there has been outreach to those property owners, both upstream and downstream of the dam. And in terms of residential, there is no residential housing upstream of the dam that's what I would call reasonably close or could be impacted. It's commercial businesses that are in the area.
Well,
They
and I wanted to include that also.
Okay. Well, when you mean by impact, what do you mean by that?
I just want to make sure that any residential building or commercial building or industrial building that's going to be impacted by this project has been notified, and
Okay.
and what kind of impact, are you aware of any significant impact to any of these people?
I would say no, because as I said, we've reached out to them 3 times now. I have had a couple people phone call me as a follow-up to those letters, but we're now at a stage where we're going to be proposing something, and that's why just this week I've been working a letter to go contact them and to let them know this is what we plan on doing, and this is what the impacts could be. The impacts, if anything, would be relative to erosion, and whether there could be erosion along the stream banks. That would be the major issue, I guess. Most of the properties, are at least the infrastructure, housing, et cetera, is located pretty far removed from the river, fringes of the river.
There is a condo development on the upper,
Right here?
reasonably new.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think they're still constructing out there. And there are a few of those units that are very close to the riverbank.
Yeah, I've been up there, and they are on the list of people to contact, and we have contacted them. But one thing I will note is, when I walked up through here, these condos are set pretty high off the river. So in terms of direct impact to water, et cetera, there would be none. And given where it's located, the impoundment ends right around here. So I don't expect any impact in that area anyways as a result of the removal.
Well, you'll probably know once you start
Yeah,
doing something, that's when they will start calling.
There's no doubt that we're at a stage right now where we're going to have to start, even though we've notified them of these public meetings. This is where the rubber meets the road. We're going to have to let people know what's happening, and also we do want to have access along this area here. So we need to get permission from those property owners.
I just wanted to ensure that they had in fact been notified.
Okay,
So thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, I get a few things, but I want to touch base on this for clarification. Again, when I was speaking earlier about people want to direct stuff through Mr. Hickey, the town manager, I know what I was thinking. I was talking about the public as a whole and their concerns of how it affects the town as a whole. Anyone that owns any property or has any concerns about how it will affect their property, their quality of life, and the appraisal and the cost of their property, definitely I would like to contact Penachuk or Mark Worms or Gomez and Sullivan. I'm not looking for the town to be a conduit that way. Again, I was talking about concerns as it reached the town. And I do want anyone that's watching this to be concerned. And again, when, Mark, you say, and this is always all due respect because I know you meant well, that you haven't heard from them. I mean, I look at them the same as me. What do they know? I'm just saying, if there's going to be impact, it's you telling them, them not telling you. And that's why I think this is important. And people that may be affected, they need to speak. They need to possibly consult an attorney, because the real world is this doesn't happen all the time. And I'm just saying people need to protect themselves. And I can't stress that enough, because the town is doing what it has to for the town. But we are not looking into everyone's property. And I'm just saying, anyone that's listening, or Mr. Kozabek out there from the papers, if you can put something in there, this is something people need to look at and be concerned. So that's how I want to stress it.
And don't get me wrong, when I said we've contacted them, that was more for public notification. There's a meeting, this is what we're going to talk about. But we're at a different point right now. So I understand what you're saying.
And I also want to say, sometimes from a point, individuals, they kind of have a feeling that the town is the protective guardian agent that will take off. And that's just not the case. We do not have the resources nor the expertise, or in some cases, you guys don't even have the expertise. I mean, this type of thing, sometimes, as good as you may be, something can happen you don't project.
Well, that's the case in any type of project.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying people need to be looking out for themselves. That's the bottom line, and I want to stress that. And I also want to stress Mr. Hickey will take phone calls concerning the town, people worried about their own property, investment, or anything else. Please contact Penachuk directly. Thank you. I'll go quickly, and if you get a 3-word answer, that may suffice, so we don't have to go longer. First one is for the New Hampshire DES. What role on site will the DES play in the removal of this dam? Will there be representatives there at any time? How will you be monitoring this?
Well, certainly, as with any dam removal, we're very interested, just from a learning perspective as well, to get some lessons learned. We will be out there occasionally. I imagine that there will be some construction oversight through the consultant that will be part of the bidding process for the contractor. So there will be somebody, a project engineer, monitoring this full time. And there's certainly interest from others, such as Fish and Wildlife Service,
The
NOAA.
project engineer, who will they be drawing their paycheck from?
Who will they be drawing? It will be based on the project cost. So whoever's paying Penachuk, it will be paying
That's
a
what I'm
portion.
saying. So it won't be a state person out there. It'll be someone being paid by Penachuk who will be out there.
Full time.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. And so overall, you guys will be monitoring like you do anything, but there won't be anyone there full-time from the state.
From the state, correct. I know that wetlands will do inspections, so that will come from the DES Wetlands Bureau. They'll be out there monitoring. And as part of this project, there is probably a monitoring protocol that will be included too, both before removal. I mean, certainly we're collecting information already, and NOAA, who's the National Oceanic Administration, Atmospheric Administration, is looking into obtaining an intern that will perhaps be gathering information both before, during, and after.
Okay, will there be any daily, weekly, or monthly reports that will have to be filed with the state as this is ongoing?
I believe based on if there's an erosion control plan and stormwater management plan as part of the project, there are certain requirements with that plan, and it's based on rain events that will need to be done, so that will all be documented and will be kept on site with the contractor.
Great. Okay. Ed, what role will the town play in the on-site removal of the dam? What resources will the town be expending to assure that this is done properly and doesn't
We're certainly here to, help in any way we can. I guess it's primarily a Pennachuck project. There needs to be some close coordination, I suspect, with the fire department. I would envision, heavy equipment, in and out of the area, removing the dam, traffic control along, DW highway, those types of things. Certainly, we would be involved with. As far as coordination, maybe coordination with some material disposal or whatever.
That's one thing I wanted to check, is we haven't found any place for material disposal, and I'll probably be contacting about that.
Okay. And I'm going on the, I guess I really didn't quite get the answer I wanted. I heard you say we'll be all things to all people, but are we going to have anyone that's going to be responsible per se for overlooking that?
Unless there's some town money in it or something that, Public Works has a specific responsibility, it's not something that I was planning on.
And that's really, it's not a trick question. I'm just wondering if we were going to have anyone out there during any of it, or maybe during any critical stages. But let's follow up on another one is, do we expect, and this one is more for you guys, I think, and Ed, you can chime in, but do we expect there to be much disruption to town services or traffic during the 1 year that this project will be going on in different stages?
The only thing I can see is there would be some temporary disruption of traffic when equipment's going in and out.
What type of disruption would the Merrimack people see? When you have to load material in a truck and haul it off site, you're going to have someone out directing traffic. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a ballpark. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm trying to get closer to this. This is going to take a year on and off in different stages. How many times do you think there's going to be a police officer out there stopping traffic, disrupting traffic? 10 times, 100 times? I'm trying to get a feel.
Yep. The removal time frame could be up to 6 weeks, and that's just for one during the actual removal stage. If you had to come back another year, it could potentially be another 6 weeks, so 12 weeks. And that's complete crystal ball.
Okay, and I guess I didn't do a good job asking the question. How many times do the people expect to see a police officer out there during that, stopping them? In other words, what type of disruption? Will it be like 2 bad days? Will it be during the 6-week period? Will they all say, geez, let's try and bypass that? It's a nightmare out there. What does the Merrimack taxpayer, what disruption, well, not even taxpayer, just the Merrimack citizen that uses our roadways, what type of disruption should they expect to see during this process as they're going, using the main thoroughfare in town and going over the bridge?
I can't give an estimate. I just don't know at this point.
Will we get, because I think that's, again, a lot of people don't affect. What it does affect is people driving through. So I'm just saying, I think that's a very valid question.
No, it's a legitimate question. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, all right. Would it be fair to say, Steve, that that Pennachuck will be prepared to put on whatever police details they need to keep the disruption to the citizens at a minimum?
Sure, it's part of the whole project cost would be, any police details that are needed for traffic control, any other services too. If we need to access any public works resources or whatever, we'd expect to pay for that as part of the project cost.
Okay, 'cause I want to stress, I don't blame anyone, but I'm real uneasy with that answer because I don't feel like I've got an understanding on what the citizens are going to expect during that 6 week. I'm just wondering, how bad is it going to be? Is it going to be a constant disruption? Is it going to be any way that it can be done during non-peak hours so that it doesn't affect it again? That's my big concern.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's going to be a lot of disruption because you can there's only so many trucks of material that you can take out. The dam is X number of cubic yards. You can fit so many cubic yards in a
How many
dump truck.
trucks do you think will come out?
That's
a good question.
I don't know the answer to that yet.
High and a low?
I don't have a high or a low.
Will it be more than 10?
I don't have a high or a low.
You really don't know if it'll be more than 10?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't computed what the volume is yet to do that.
Is that something we'll get the information?
Yeah. We do have a permitting process where we're going to have to, the town will get what's in the permit, and then there we'll have a lot of that information.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying what we're trying to do today is get as much information as we can. And like I say, some of you don't have, and that's cool, but I'm just checking to see if we'll eventually get it, that's all. And again, the dam's coming down, and it's going to be what it's going to be, and that's fine. And like I said, we had an option to take it over, no complaints, but the big concern to me is going to be the disruption, and that's why I keep hopping that. And but knowing whether it's 10 loads or I have to say again, I'm very uneasy that we don't have any idea whether it's going to be 10 loads or 1,000. I would think at this point we might have a feel. We really don't.
Well, as I've laid out tonight, we're in the conceptual plan mode right now, and until we get to what's more preliminary design, well, we have an idea of that. And I mean, I have no problem coming back and letting folks know, there could be another public meeting. I'd be happy to share that, but I just don't have it tonight.
Well, that was my hope. That really wasn't a question, but I would expect one more time we'll probably do this because, again, we're at this stage, and before it all happens, a month before, I would hope we'll probably do this a little more. But, again, I do it, and I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just trying to say, to me, the biggest question I have is the road and how it affects us. That's it.
I understand where you're coming from. I'm not offended.
Okay. If something was to happen along the way that wasn't expected, again, as you said, we don't have a crystal ball, whether it be this or anything else, but if something was to happen, damage to the bridge, anything, how will the town be notified? Is there any type of process? Would it be a courtesy that we would expect? We would just immediately get a phone call to the town manager? But because even 1 week before, you're going to have the perfect laid plans. If things are happening out there that we don't know are happening, how will we be notified that something has kind of gone askew? Not through anyone's fault, but it isn't what we're expecting.
Because the bridge is I believe it's town-owned, we would be, if there was something that came up, we would notify the town immediately. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
That's a good answer. Yeah. Will this disrupt in any way the cleanup at Watson Park? In any way is what's going to happen? Is it going to affect any of that property out there, any of the contamination, any of the wells?
In my opinion, it will not affect anything in Watson Park, but I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish at Watson Park either.
Okay. Ed, could you touch base on that a little to answer his question, what we're trying to accomplish at Watson Park as far as the cleanup and the contamination out there?
Well, the project has a series of sampling wells, and it's being, groundwater is being tested by an environmental firm and submitting an annual report to the DES. The town owns the property and has some plans for development of the parcel as a park. With some staged improvements every year. Trust, and there's a committee actively working on that. But we'll be working closely with DES January, February, as this year's annual report comes in, to see what the town can do next year. Maybe perhaps take the fence down. Maybe do some additional improvements to the park. So that's.
My concern is we're looking to, like you said, we're getting our yearly report in January. We're going to actually, tomorrow night's meeting, Keith is going to bring us more up to date with meetings that went on last month. What I'm concerned is could this put us a step back? In other words, everything is fine, everything's good, and all of a sudden something happens with the dam, and there's been changes that all of a sudden puts us backwards, and that's what my concern.
I would say no. As I said earlier, the only impact will be temporal, in that there will be sediment collecting down below that dam in the area of that pool. But over time, it will scour back out to the condition it's in today. So I don't see any impact on the park.
Okay, and this is a question I really don't, you're definitely not the guy that answers it. Steve may answer it, or maybe there's no one in the room that can answer it, but I'll ask it out loud. What responsibility does Pennachuck have if the Watson Park site is disrupted, affects it with chemicals, or any other negatives to the town and environment that were not projected occur? Is there any liability? And again, I'm not expecting you to answer that. Is there a liability that we're aware of that you guys are accepting by taking on this task? Steve, you know anything on that?
Well, I can talk a little bit about the same type of situation in any other project we do. We do have a certain amount of liability insurance that if excuse me, if we take an action, for example, we're digging a trench and we hit a pipe and the trench floods and we flood somebody's basement, we have insurance for those types of things. With something like this, I guess, it would depend on whether there was negligence on the company's part or not, and the contractor's part. If there's no negligence, you could have a 500-year flood that might occur after this.
Steve, you've just given me the answer. So not to prolong it, basically you're saying you guys are coming with us with certain projections, expectations to happen, and making decisions based on that. And if something was to happen that affected it, as long as it can't be shown that your engineers made a mistake or didn't project what they would have, then there would be no harm per se. And again, that would be for legal people to figure out. But
right.
You've answered it. You've answered it.
Thanks.
Thank you. The ice study you referenced to being done by the firm in Lebanon. If it shows, right now you're saying that you don't think it'll be an issue, but say something shows that there will be a significant impact to the icing, what will happen? Is there anything at this stage that could happen that would have you guys pull the plug and say, we can't take down the dam? Or have we already reached that? And if there was an icing issue, what would we do to mitigate that?
At this point right now, there's nothing that would prevent us from moving forward with the removal. I feel we did this study ourselves, the ice study, but it's being reviewed by Coal Regions Lab. I'm pretty confident in what we've done, that there isn't an impact. So I can't give you an answer until I hear back from the Corps. If they find that there is an impact, we'll have to look at it and see how we would need to address it.
Fine.
In my opinion, it's not necessarily a breaker as to whether this dam's removed or not.
Okay. I think you've already answered my earlier question was when I was saying how long will each stage take. Somehow I was hearing the word 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Andy?
No questions. I've been working on it along with Nelson for all of these years and working with Mark, and I've been impressed with particularly in that first year, all the thoroughness of the study. But I would suggest anybody could go back to that first report and see the work that was done, testing the depths, where the bedrock was, where the sediment was, what it contained. They're very thoroughly done before they came to this point. It was mentioned that this is a designated river, which is Souhegan River Local Advisory Committee. Nelson and I and George May sit on that. That commission has been watching this project very carefully because we're charged with the whole Souhegan River, and as have the other towns. Milford's interested in, because their dam's the next one up the river.
Yeah,
But I don't have any questions. If anybody does have any concerns for me, I'd be glad to answer their questions anytime also.
Thank you, Andy. Richard?
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Densberger for funding this, and so forth. and good presentation. So based on the questions that have already been asked, I'll just skip over some of the ones that I sent you.
Sure.
And just highlight a few.
Yep.
And then the four of us, if I haven't hit them, I'll just pass this on.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, one of the questions that the Watson Committee had is, have any permits been issued for release of the water? And the reason we want that is so that, we have an idea, are you on schedule, not on schedule, things like that.
When you say the release of the water,
Any permits been issued?
there's been no permits issued on the project.
Okay.
We're in that process now of pursuing it, but nothing's been issued.
You talked about one way that the sediment and the water flow would occur. Have other scenarios been addressed? If so, why is this one chosen?
We try to because of the sediment was clean and because of the conditions below the dam are pretty poor from an aquatic fisheries, macroinvertebrates, bugs that live in the water perspective. We felt that allowing the sediment to naturally transport downstream was the best avenue. And some of it is related to cost, because if you had to dredge all that sediment out, it would be excessively
I remember that was one of
expensive.
the original thoughts, was to dredge
Yeah.
all that sand out of it.
So we looked at that, but we dismissed it relatively soon.
So you must have been talking to mechanical engineers who say, let gravity be your friend. Right?
Or let Mother Nature take its course.
In your report, you had a dewatering rate in feet per 24-hour days.
Yeah.
Did you want to address that?
Yeah, that's another thing I think some people are concerned about, and this commonly arises on dam removal projects. When we talk about dewatering the impoundment, we're not saying, well, let me back up a second. The amount of water that's backed up by this dam actually isn't that much. When you look at the photo there's so much sediment. I could walk all through that area, and it was up to my knees. So when I say dewatering, we're not talking about a big flush of water moving downstream. It's it'd be no different. You wouldn't even notice the difference. It'd be a slow process.
Okay. The next question had to do with ice jams, and I guess, are you redoing the study, or are you done with the study and the conclusion?
The study is draft.
Okay.
Our conclusion is removal of the dam will not cause any icing impacts on the bridge. That's being reviewed by the Corps. And in fact, I talked to the woman at the Corps today, and I said, this is the issue. It's the Chamberlain Bridge. People are concerned about it, and that's what we want you to look at this for. So we sent them what's called a hydraulic model, and that's the world they would live in, and the report that we did as well. And as soon as that report is done, or when we get feedback, that will be sent to anybody that wants it. So that'll be available for folks. I know I'll be contacting Ruth about it. Oh, I know.
The guardian angel.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think you had, maybe you did, but did you address the presence of threatened or endangered plants or animals?
Yep, we did. We contacted New Hampshire Fish and Game and the Natural Heritage Bureau about that specific question, and there's no issue of concern here. Some threatened and endangered species are in the area, but not in the area that we're working.
Snail darters or?
Nope.
Okay.
It's a good question, though.
Well, the committee's questions.
Okay.
The next one was this long question about the historic preservation review process, RSA 227-C-9, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. Has that study been carried out by your
The study's been carried out, and we sent the report to the Heritage Commission, so they do have it.
Okay. Is there, even with the dam removed, is there expected to be a little waterfall still in place?
Yeah, there is. And to be honest with you, we don't know what the height of that waterfall will be. We don't know if it's 4 feet, 8 feet. We don't. That's one of the things we don't know.
Okay.
Can I interject a question there, Richard?
Sure.
Take that as a yes. Thank you.
30
Question,
seconds.
will you not know that till after you do it, or will you know it like 3 weeks once you've done more research?
We won't know it until we're out there doing it.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Has FEMA been informed of the possible removal of the?
They haven't been informed, but they will have to be informed, because what we're doing is removing that dam will change the 100-year floodplain above the dam, and anytime there's a change, you have to file something with FEMA to let them know.
Okay. Looking at it from our hats.
And
Watson-
the
Watson Park
okay, all right.
Committee.
Yep.
Can you think of anything that you might do that would help us, Watson Park Committee, to put in a beach or anything like that? In other words, is this sand useful for a beach? Is it, or anything like that? Is there anything that you could do that would save us money later on?
Well, if you're looking to put in a beach, and we've tested that sediment and it's clean, I think there's some opportunities potentially there that could help both of us. In terms of removing some of the sand, we will have to do some removal of sand right in front of the dam just to be able to access it.
Right.
It would be a lot less costly for us to move it right around to the Watson Park area
Yeah.
and dump it.
See, and that would be good to know, because we'd have to get moving on something like that almost immediately if,
Yeah.
if it was possible.
Yep.
So
But
it's a possibility.
yeah, I mean, we're open to hearing anything on this. We aren't finalized anything.
You're the engineer. How that would cost money? What do you think the person who's funding you would go along with this?
Oh, I don't drive the truck, but I don't know. I'd have to figure out like how much material you're talking about. That's the key. You have to know how much are you looking to put in, how much material do you want, and then we can figure out, well, how many truckloads that is and how much time it takes someone to load the truck and bring it over there.
Okay.
So,
All right, that's all we had. Oh, I had.
I'm fine.
Well, Jackie?
what I think
Yes, please. Thank you so much for your forthright presentation. It's very interesting. Just to elaborate a little bit, Harold Watson is concerned that there's been just an erosion of probably from the spring flood that's now there's sections that are about 8 feet deep, and that was the little section that we thought, how difficult would it be? Is it possible to get a permit to shape that a little bit so that it's the average height of the water is pretty much the same across?
I don't want to get into too much detail, but do you have an idea? I have no idea where you're talking. Are you talking about in the channel itself?
Yes.
In the river itself?
I think it's just about where that yellow dot is.
Yeah.
Okay, my only concern by putting material in there is it will eventually scour out.
Yeah.
Unless you put something big in there.
Yes. How?
He said rocks.
He said big rocks and boulders. I was wondering.
You would have to get a permit. You'd have to really think hard about what that will, putting a structure in there will do to the river. Because it will affect it.
Yes.
I'm not sure what. I'd have to talk about it more with you, or what you guys are looking for. But you couldn't put sand in there because eventually it'll just move its way right back out.
Yes.
That by the way, it's not uncommon to get a real scour hole under very high flows. You got it move, the velocity is very fast here, and then boom, it stops, and you get sometimes a scour hole there.
And I think that's what he's
I
concerned
think
about.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Safety reasons, too.
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to hop in there real quick, too. I just want to make sure that at a certain point, the town council is involved in the middle of this. I'm just saying, I understand that you may have to talk to Mark to get a feel, but I'm just saying at a certain point, if you guys decided that's the way to go, it would definitely be something you would need to come to the town council with to make sure that they're all. And I think it's a great idea, as I stress that, but I think it's something that we would want to, and probably have Nelson and Andy here at that meeting also. So that's all. I just want to make sure that we're all working together on that. Okay. Connie.
My questions are here and my questions are there, so I'll thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll pass the buck.
All right.
You're up, Ruth.
No, I'm ready. You've come a long way since that first meeting, Mark.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
Well, it's good and
Okay.
it's bad.
yeah,
Because you know where I stand.
I completely understand that.
But I particularly liked that aerial view you had showing where the fire station was
Yeah.
and the beautiful curve of the dam and the direction the ice would go in
Yeah.
if it came down. And so I'm wondering if the Coldwater Region Lab has a copy of that
Of the
geological curve there.
I actually have given him these overhead aerials. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the first, not this area. This aerial photo is kind of.
I think I know what you're. Oops, I'm going the wrong
That's
way.
kind of confusing because it has
That
so
one
much-
there.
That one there.
They-
That's beautiful.
In fact, I sent that same one in the picture before last week.
Okay, good.
So they do have that.
All right.
So yeah, because they're very interested in the direction of flow too.
Yes, yeah, and I am too.
Yep.
And I will be waiting for your letter back from the Coal Region Lab.
Yep.
And as I mentioned before, and I told you the first meeting you had that we all got together at, that I'm the guardian angel of that bridge, and I'm going to stick there. So, and I have one other thing that I'd just like some clarification on. It's not really a question. You talked about the dam eligibility and for it being national and state recognition.
Yeah.
For its historic value. Does the eligibility have the same requirements for a dam as it does for everything else, a building, the bridge, that the owner has to be the one who wants to have it done?
When you say have it done, like if a guy owns,
Put on the rolls of historic preservation.
so
So it would have to be the owner of the dam that would request that, or to sign a request for that.
well, let me back up. Pennachuck wasn't necessarily asking it to be on the register.
I know that.
But they are required to do a study.
Yeah.
The state has come back and said, yes, it is eligible. So now,
Okay.
okay, go ahead.
All right. So if it was to be put on a register, they would have to okay it. That's my
Yeah, they have no choice at that point, right? Is that correct,
That's
Deb?
my understanding. No, I think they do. And
Okay, they could contest it, right?
I believe they
Yeah.
could, that you have to have the permission of the owner in
Right,
order to move
yeah.
forward. And I believe that's what you had done with the Chamberlain Bridge.
Yes, the town owns
Helped
it, so the
facilitate
town-
that process, and that's my understanding. Unfortunately, there's nobody here from DHR to verify that. I'd be more than happy to clarify that for you and get back to you.
Well, I would think that all
I-
applications are the same.
I believe it is.
Okay, that's all. I just wanted
Okay.
clarification. Thank you.
Yep.
You all set, Lucy?
Yep.
Well, then I was also glad to see that I do know now who is going to be out there looking out for the interest of that bridge. I'm good.
Well, if I'm going to be on site at this removal, Ruth will be right next to me.
Nelson?
And we're going to have a good crowd at the
Oh, yeah.
make that break.
Yep.
Yeah, a good presentation, Mark. A couple questions that I have that sort of carry over from early on discussions we had about this. One of them was I think we talked about this issue with the wetlands that are behind the fire department and the possibility of preserving those wetlands by creating some sort of an impoundment about where that yellow stripe is.
Yep.
That would keep the wetlands in a wet condition, even though the river level dropped. I take it you've looked at that and come to some conclusions.
Well, two things that complicate the problem. And really, the major one is we looked at the amount of drainage that goes into that wetland, and it's very, very minimal. So it's not going to stay unless you put some type of control structure, which, from Pennachuck's standpoint, they don't want another structure there to have to manage. Letting it dewater was really the choice that we looked at because it is created. That impoundment is created by the dam, but it wouldn't be able to survive by the local runoff. There just isn't enough there.
Okay, you realize it takes runoff even from here, I think. Eventually, the water gets there.
I don't.
The rear of the Canal Shopping Center and all of that, that's all ties in. But whatever, if you've looked at it.
Yeah, I looked at topographic maps and figured out what the drainage area would be, how much would drain into that.
Yeah. Okay, the other thought was, the other thing that we had talked about was the future of a walking trail up the river. We're going to create some new land here, and I guess the ownership reverts to the abutters. I guess they're probably owned to the river, but is there some way of getting a public access that would connect the Watson Park to the school property, for example, on the north side of the river?
One thing this Pennachuck's ownership is very minimal, actually, and I need to talk to Walter Warren about that a little bit more, of exactly how much they own, because the property maps that I've gotten don't show much on it, but I think it is just the dam. But I know we've talked internally about, and I know there's been talk about a heritage trail coming up through here. One potential opportunity that is on the table potentially is that we are going to have to do some type of mitigation for historic impacts, and whether Pennachuck, as part of that mitigation, could help out with part of this trail is to be determined, but it's something I think that we should consider at least.
If we could at least get the right-of-way secured, the right to do it, even if we don't construct anything, if we could just have the rights, then eventually we can do something in the future.
Okay, like for example, if people were to come up through here,
Yeah.
my only concern, and I know people have mentioned, is going up through this former power canal.
Yeah.
But like the May floods that we just had, Mother's Day flood, that canal was filled with water, and even with that dam gone, I have a feeling that canal would be full of water.
Well, it'd be seasonal.
Okay.
Seasonal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I mean, no, obviously, this the flood plain, yeah.
But I've thought about it being a great avenue to come right up through there.
Yeah. I mean, for a walking trail,
Yep.
you just don't use it when it's full of water. Yeah.
You close the gate.
Personally, I think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah. Okay, is that something we can weave in here or keep on the table for?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Ed, can I ask that you also put that active on, give that to Keith as something that, as we look at the town's interests, that stays there? Okay, I figured you did. Thank you. Nelson, you're good?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Steve, I'm going to go to you at the end, so you can speak at the end. But right now, I will go. Do we have any questions for you, young lady?
Any questions for me? No, but I do want to apologize for being so rude. I acknowledge that there were folks here that I routinely work with on any dam removal project, but I didn't introduce them. So if I could take that opportunity, I'd greatly appreciate that.
We'd love that.
Great. John McGee, if you could just raise his hand. John McGee is with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. Next to him is Eric Derleth, who is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And then Grace Levergood is with the Dam Bureau. She's one of our dam safety inspectors. And behind them, in the back there, is Matt Collins. He's with NOAA, which is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. I fumble on that one all the time. I apologize, Matt. These folks have been instrumental in conjunction with Steve and with Mark in, really answering questions and really providing technical and financial assistance for this project. And they've been phenomenal, not only in this project, but in others we're working on. And I didn't know if they had anything to add at this point as well as part of this presentation. Not at this point, but certainly if there are specific questions, they're here to offer their assistance as well.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, I'd like to go around, not step by step, but to ask if anyone else here has questions they would like to ask. Finley?
Thanks, Dave. As far as the disruption, just so I understand, it seems to me that the removal is going to be concrete. A little sediment, evidently,
Right.
possibly elsewhere, local or not. But so I think the staging area that you spoke of will accommodate much of that traffic at least what I envisioned from your description. And, and equipment in and out would be an occasion.
Well, we're talking about a staging area right here, so the equipment would be brought in left there. The only time we would be disrupting traffic is when we have to haul debris out.
Right, so I
think it'll be minimal, but I want to be certain before I answer the question.
Yeah, it makes reasonable sense, I think.
Okay.
And I agree, Finley. I think part of what I was also looking for was I'm just saying there may be times that are best for that to be done and times that not. 4 o'clock probably is not the best time for it to be done. So I guess what I'm saying is I would be looking for some communication to go on at that too.
That makes sense.
If there's any disruption, we may want to do it at 11 a.m. during the day per se, when people are trying to get in.
I think you're right, Dave. I think it's that evening hour and a half that would be a nightmare.
And I was just trying to point that out, that we just all need to be looking at that.
The other, 2 other quick things that are related, I guess, is, I don't know, wetlands mitigation. We are eliminating, I don't know, I imagine a couple acres of wetlands behind the fire station.
Yep. It's a few acres.
What I understand is there is a mitigation process of a 2 to 1, if I'm not mistaken, and that doesn't seem to hold necessary in this project.
I'll give you my take on it, and then maybe Deb, you can. But we did have the Wetlands Bureau out there, and I think they're thinking on projects, restoration projects where you're removing a dam. If you're going back to a natural condition, I don't think it's as I shouldn't say as much of an issue, but they aren't seeking mitigation. But I should probably defer to you, Deb, on that.
No, I think you're accurate in stating that, Mark. Again, we did have a Wetlands Bureau representative come out in the field, view, and talked about conceptually what was going to be proposed. But over the years on all dam removal projects thus far, it's seen, again, as a restoration project. So it's almost a mitigation in and of itself. So they are not requiring any type of mitigation.
And I guess it doesn't necessarily have to do with this, with this dam in particular, but it's intriguing that a beaver can throw up the dam and create an absolute nightmare for a developer. And I was interested in this. However, I see a benefit of this becoming dry, because if you go back, and I think you could use some of your dam material to extend the parking behind our fire station, because a turnaround is almost impossible there currently, and it was all because of that wetland area. They couldn't do anything about it. I don't know who owns that property.
I was envisioning the library there, Finley, myself.
There you go. Especially if the town owns it. So I think if it is going to ultimately be dry, timing, I think, is going to be impossible to deal with it, but there is room for distributing some of that fill as well as the riverbank for a beach, it sounds like. But
if I could respond a little bit to that, it's going to change the type of wetland, but it's not going to totally dry it out. You're not going to have a lot of standing water back there, but it is still going to be a wetland. Jurisdictional wetland, it'll still be a wetland area, and therefore it isn't going to be dry.
But for how long, Andy, if you don't mind? Because to me, if there's no real water feeding it, eventually, maybe not in a year's time, but eventually it will be dry. It's just nature doing its job. There's nothing feeding that. If there's no runoff coming down the hills, nothing much from Connell's.
We do have water coming in to that area from the Connell Shopping Center and from the other higher slopes. If you go out behind the fire station and look there now, you will see a couple open streams through the middle of the wetlands plants. Those are streams that are flowing in there. They aren't great. They don't bring a great amount. But I think in going back to some of the studies that were done earlier, it's still going to remain what the state considers jurisdictional wetlands there. It's going to change the type of wetland. Therefore, it isn't as dry as you think it would be. So it's almost like a beaver pond if you go up by the middle school. There's a beaver pond right out back which broke its dam last spring. Right now it's a great meadow. I figure in a few years it'll be a nice young forest, and then the beaver are going to be back and it's going to become water again. But, that's kind of what we're doing, but it's not going to go that dry. And I think, too, you mentioned that sometimes you're not sure how much water is going to still go around and kind of flow that way.
And a real high flow is possible even without the dam in place, that it could flow over into that area right here.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
That's it. Does anyone else? I'll go real quick through just so everyone. You all set, Nancy?
All set.
Mike? Tom? Betty? Okay, going around the other table. Andy, Richard? Jackie? Connie? Bruce? Nelson? Okay. Well, they got name tags. Contrary to popular belief, I can read 2 syllables.
One up on me, Dave. I can't read them from here.
What I'd like to do at this time is we normally reserve public comment for the end of the meeting, but I would like to right now open it to public comment. So if anyone has any questions, if they could feel free to just come up and speak it. And if anyone's shy, you can even speak from out there because we don't have the normal podium there. So is everyone out there all set? Pete? Yes.
Yeah. Do I have the floor?
Yeah, absolutely.
My name is John Hall from McKelwin Street, number 6. I've been in town 60-plus years, and as a kid, I've seen this whole thing evolve behind the dam, the sediment. We used to have a nice swimming pool down there years ago. And I'm in favor of the, being a fisherman and whatnot, I'm in favor of the dam being removed because I think the natural flow of the river, as the Indians used to see it, is going to be good for the town. I don't think that the draining of the wetland behind the firehouse is going to be detrimental. Part of that's been filled in over the years anyway. I see the dam itself in material. I don't think it has to be moved very far. If the material from the dam was set up in a holding area and crushed, it could be used by the Watson Park and maybe additional fill behind the firehouse. There are pits from the old McKelwin tannery down there that have to be dealt with, and I think through the proper engineering and review that the concrete from the dam probably could be crushed and used in that area to fill those voids and make it safe, for use. And also some of that crushed material might be able to use along the embankment in the big pool below the rapids, below the dam, to stabilize the area where there's a lot of erosion. So my opinion is the material from the dam could be taken out, crushed to the appropriate size, used right in the immediate area, and moved during the day not to interfere with the traffic flow. But I envision not belly dumps, but large dump trucks only having to move a few hundred yards. But that whole thing needs to be coordinated and planned out ahead of time. But that dam doesn't have to move very far to have to go home. That's my comment.
John, I want to stress the consulting bill that you'll be sending tomorrow morning sent to Pennachuck and not Town Hall. You continue to be like E.F. Hutton. As soon as you stood up, I knew you were going to have something out of the box to come up with.
I envision the improvement to the river probably returning it somewhat the way it was 50 or 100 years ago, because the sediment has ruined that section of the river from the dam to the Wildcat Falls, rapids. And by getting the river back to its natural flow, there's going to be additional land, and then get a cleanup group in there to clean up the embankment, and it's going to look good. But I think you can minimize the whole thing, just tweak the organizational part of it a little bit, and that thing could really go smoothly.
Very nice.
Thank you very, very much, John. Appreciate it. You got anything else to say before you leave? Feel free. Mark, would you like to comment on some of Mr. Hall's comments?
You're hired. No. In all seriousness, I always feel like we're on this side and there's the other side, and I think coming to a meeting like this and hearing other people's input is extremely helpful for me and for for Steve and others here about what other options are out there for what we could do. So, I appreciate hearing that, and if anybody else has some other ideas, it'd be great to hear that as well. So,
great. Thank you again, John. Appreciate it. Anyone else have anything? That might be a tough act to follow, but Pete, you always got something.
I guess as a member of the Heritage Commission, the only thing I continue to lament that we couldn't find a way to save the dam for its historic significance. We did look for a way to try to see if it had economic value that would justify its preservation. And we thought, hydroelectric generation might be an answer. We did have somebody from Essex Hydro look at it to see if they'd be interested in it. They said it was kind of on the edge as to whether it had potential for hydroelectric power or not. And they would have needed a lot of time to investigate that some more. So I think, unfortunately, we just were too late with that and ran out of time. Otherwise, it looks like it's beyond our control or beyond our opportunity to influence anymore.
Thank you, Pete. Bernie, I know you're here with Penachuk, but you're also here as a citizen of Merrimack. You got anything to say?
No, nothing to add, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we're...
I was wondering if I could ask one question. I'm Eric Burrell, Fish and Wildlife Service.
Oh, anything would be great, sir.
Question for the town. If we had generated clean sand as material from this project, would the town have any need for sand or other kinds of impounded sediments?
I'm going to direct that to Ed Chase.
Drop it off at the Public Works garage.
We can always find a home for fill, and we do a lot with recycling, whether it's recycled, concrete, particularly if it's not reinforced, or hot top, or those types of things. I think a lot of these questions in terms of the construction details will be something that can be coordinated, and as the design moves forward, and perhaps if there's another presentation, a lot of the more detailed questions of traffic control and coordination with the fire department, or maybe some of the contractors' anticipated means and methods will come forward as that final design is prepared, and that's the part we're all anxious to hear about. So,
can I just add one comment? Our preliminary design was for allowing most of the sediment to go downstream. But from a cost perspective, and I haven't looked at this, if the town was to take a large portion of this sand that's in the impoundment, it's possible from a project cost standpoint that it may be cheaper to actually dredge the material if it's going somewhere not too far away, rather than having a contractor out there in 2007 for the part of the removal and then having to come back in 2008 for the other part of the removal. So I would like to chat, I guess, further after the meeting about that. It would help disruption of traffic too, versus one summer versus two.
And Ed, that's something that unless it's something you consider to be a no-brainer, or you and Keith, if it's one of those Metzas, I would like that brought before the council, because I do think that could be a significant plus or minus. And unless you think it's an absolute no-brainer either way, I would like to have an agenda item where the council could weigh in on it, because I think there's some benefits there. Possibly. Mike?
Quickly, the gentleman that just spoke into Mr. Hall, and this is a question only for my own information. On East Chamberlain Road, at the end of that, there's 40 condominiums on the end of that road. Correct? 39.
Oh, I'm
40.
sorry. I'm sorry. You're talking right up here, the ones up here
on East at the end of East Chamberlain Road. There's approximately 39 to 40 condos at the end of that road.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
On West Chamberlain Road, at the end of that road, there's another 30 to 40 condominiums on that road. For my information, is it more detrimental to the fish that we would like to bring back onto that river? Is it more detrimental to have sediment in the river, or to have those storm drains from those developments with their pesticides that are posted on their lawns that say dangerous, stay off, going into the water? Is it more detrimental to the fish for the sediment or the chemicals being dumped into the water? That's just a question that would either one of you can help me out with that, because everyone keeps telling me that if the dam's removed, we will replenish that place with fish. And I find that very hard to believe, because I have seen the depletion myself since the development on the river itself, let alone what happens with the dam. I would just wonder if anyone could help me with that. Which one would be more harmful to the fish?
Well, I'm not anybody who could comment on the chemicals in the river. That's not my expertise. The fact that the Salhegan has become reconnected with the Merrimack system again would allow the ability for fish movement back and forth from the two river systems, which essentially since the dam was constructed, there's been no ability for fish to move out of the Merrimack and up to Sauhegan. And all the way back to before the dams were originally built, pre-settlement by Europeans, we did have fish moving into the system from the Atlantic Ocean, salmon, shad, alewives. And this is one project that would restore a significant length of the Sauhegan River. And you will get natural channel dynamics enter into the system once you remove the kind of the plug in the system.
But would they want to swim up to that water is what I'm trying to find out.
I'm not really up personally on the water quality in the Sauhegan.
Because that is...
Right now, but I think there are quite a bit of studies out there.
There is an...
show the Sauhegan to be relatively...
During the summertime in our local newspapers, they always have water quality testing. And for some strange reason, over the last 5 to 7 years, East Chamberlain Road is the only location that always, on a consistent basis, says not available. And I didn't know if that was a common thread, if that was a mistake or what, but that area always says not available. Not available.
Meaning they didn't test it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know.
And that is consistent and historic in this town through the last 7 or 8 years. I don't know if that's an oversight because of the development, or is that something they just do not want to tell us?
I don't know the answer to that.
I have a gentleman in the back. If you could just re-identify yourself, and then Andy will go after that.
Matt Collins with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I just want to add to that general discussion a couple of things. One thing to keep in mind is that taking the conditions as they are in the impoundment now versus a dam removal situation and presuming the inputs, like the one you mentioned, remain the same, the water quality should improve because right now you have more of a stagnant water condition in that impoundment, which basically allows a lot of pollutants to accumulate. If I'm explaining that well.
That does make sense, because if we did take it down, then we could wash all the chemicals from the condos into the Merrimack River.
That didn't sound right, but it's true.
That's how it sounded.
That's not the main point, but in essence what you have is you reduce the residence time of the water. And so you have, in that particular reach of river, you basically have an improved water quality condition because you have movement of whatever constituents are in the water through the system over time. The other thing to consider is fish that are going to be moving into the system only come in transiently. That is, they only come in for a short period of time and they come out again. And so they're not exposed to whatever the conditions are in a particular place for an extended period of time. And so the question you might want to ask is, will it affect their reproductive type success and so forth? I do not believe from what I've seen in that river, the conditions are such that they'd be detrimental to those fish.
I mean, they're stocking fry in Atlantic salmon fry, little baby fish in the river further upstream. So they're trying to establish salmon runs through this river as it is already. So upstream of that area, the water quality has got to be pretty good. I haven't looked at it, but I would assume it would be pretty good.
They won't tell us what the answers are for
I don't know that.
To keep this kind of focused, what
Sure.
I'd like to do is go to Andy next, and then since one of the questions was asked to John, I'd like John, if you could address it from a historical perspective after that. Andy?
Mike, let me address your question as to fertilizer, pesticides, and that kind of issues on those lawns. Nelson and the Planning Board and myself with the Conservation Commission look at that very closely with each and every development. Those two condo developments, the notes in their building plans require that pesticides and fertilizers be applied only by a licensed applicator. So they are going to be applied in the proper amounts, and it will not go off-site and cause pollution. The difficulty becomes on private homeowners who think that if one bag of fertilizer is good, two is better, then you start getting the pollution, and they're more of a hazard than the licensed applicators.
I'm going to ask you to walk up there in the spring and watch the storm drains up there.
Well, I would be glad to.
And I'm going to take you up.
Also, sitting on the Sauhegan River Local Advisory Commission, the water has been studied very thoroughly as part of the studies in the last 2 or 3 years, and the water quality is very good in there. I'm going to guess, and Nelson obviously is going to jump in here too.
But why is it on a consistent basis that East Chamberlain Road always has a non-reading?
I believe that is because the Sauhegan Watershed Association has limited funds for conducting the tests. They only are done by volunteers. They have had a shortage of volunteers for the last few years. They concentrate on areas where swimming takes place, which is basically upriver. And that is, I'm guessing, but from what I know of that particular program, it's not available, means that there's nobody out there once a week at 7 o'clock in the morning with the testing equipment in a boat doing the testing.
I think Mike's volunteering.
I find it a coincidence that it's one spot for 7 years that nobody will volunteer to. But we will continue. I'm sorry, Mr. McCray.
No, these are all very legitimate questions. I guess my question is, and I just looked at you, Andy, how could we answer that? Is this someone, I mean, is this a matter of you making a phone call and just finding out, is that the case? I mean, we're assuming that.
Yes, we just asked George May.
Okay.
Yeah, on that one, and Nelson?
George has all that information, and he'd love to have more volunteers. He's forever crying for volunteers. The reason we have the NA readings, and they're scattered all around the town. I'm surprised to hear that they seem to be consistent in one area, but maybe it's just at one place that they had a volunteer and couldn't get one. But I'll tell you that if there is someone you know who would like to volunteer for that, George would be happy to have him come on board. And moreover, the testing that's done is testing, we should understand, is testing for E. coli. They're really looking for swimming safety. So it doesn't really address some of the issues that you were raising with chemicals and so on. It has to do with E. coli and the safety for swimming. So that's what the test is done for. The reason, again, is money. They would be happy to test for other things if they had the money to do it. But it's all done by volunteers, and the town supports us a little bit with some of the testing at the treatment plant. But it's an issue, and if there's volunteers, I'd be happy to have them.
George is asking for money right now for they just sent out the request. So,
and I would also like to go on the record as saying that Mr. Malzone has a magnificent boat that I bet would be good. And I know for a fact he recently registered up in Concord, so it should be available.
Don't need a boat. Don't need a boat.
Smell a cover up.
It's got to wade into the water a little bit.
Okay. You all set in?
Yep.
John, do you have anything you could add to it on again from what you saw before?
The only thing I can throw in there is like, if you go back like 40 years ago, the river was actually narrower than it is today. And above the dam, the water was deeper, but once it filled with sediment, okay, there was pretty much a constant flow of water over the dam. But I remember as a kid, the dam during the summer when the water level was low, the water would stop flowing over the dam, all right? And it would become pretty non-usable, if you will. So what I see happening is through a natural opening, because the river is going to search out its natural riverbed that it had, 50, 100 years ago before the dam was in, right? And hopefully it searches out some rocky bed, bed material, and maybe we'll get somewhat of a rapid flow, a little bit more rapid flow down through there. You're going to have a natural flushing effect, except for extremely low water, during the summer, where you're going to be, if you did have contaminants going into the river, you're going to have a bigger river bank to monitor it and pick it up. Today it can flow in there because it's just, it's like a pond behind the dam. Pretty nasty, actually, compared to what it was 40 years ago. That's my input.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, do we have anyone that has anything else? Okay, if that's the case, then we're going to close this up before 9 o'clock. We all good?
Have Steve talk?
Yeah, I was just trying to get the final thing. Thank you, Tom, very much, though. Steve, if I'm going to give you the final words to wrap it up, and I want to very quickly say that Pennachuck has been good during this whole thing, but you've been fantastic to us. And when we called up and said we wanted you here, you didn't ask to look at your calendar. You did nothing. You said you give us a date and a time, and our people will be there. And we appreciate being treated that way.
Well, great.
So
Well, thank you. Let me just say it's a pleasure to be here again. We've really enjoyed having the opportunity to make these kinds of presentations. This project is it's unique, and it does raise some concerns. We wanted to make sure that we had lots of public involvement and participation in the whole project. It's very important to us. So, again, appreciate the forum, and I don't want to delay the meeting any longer. Just say thank you and good night.
Steve, the only thing I would ask is if we could put the onus on you guys, because you're going to know when you're close better than we are, but we would like to have one more meeting, and it doesn't have to be a 2-hour special, but we would like to have it before you guys actually get down there. You know, when you're a month or two away, if you could come up here and give us the final update, if you could touch base with the people at Town Hall to get on the agenda, we'd really appreciate it if you could take the lead on that.
Sure, no, we'd be glad to do that. It's been a very good part of the process. I think once we get further into permitting and a lot more of the detailed engineering, we'll probably have more to tell you and more information that we can actually share with everybody about, you know, how many cubic yards of sand are in there and the plans for removal. I like the idea of being able to be able to keep the removal of the sand if the town can use it, whether it's for a beach or public works projects. It probably will save us money not to have to truck it away. So, I mean, those are easy.
Well, I actually
easy
thought
things.
this was an exciting part of the meeting. I mean, one of the few times I've been in a meeting where I thought problems were actually being solved. It's a terrible thing to say, but I mean, having John say that, I think a lot of eyes lit up at that time, so that was positive. Mark, on behalf of the people of Merrimack and the Town Council, I want to thank you for how you've dealt with Richard and Andy and everyone, but
What'd you mean
I mean
by
that in a positive way.
I'm not dealing with Richard. Actually, he's a pretty nice guy. I've talked to on the phone.
Well, it's meant in a positive way, meaning you see the emails going back and forth, and we appreciate it very much. So dealing in a positive way.
Good.
And just the whole way you came up today, extremely well prepared, and we thank you very, very much. I have a much larger comfort feeling tonight as we walk out of this room than I did when we walked into it, so thank you again.
Good.
And that's it. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Nancy, seconded by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0.
Good.